Hey there everybody, Steve the Amateur Historian. Doing a quick impromptu video here because I just literally found out a really interesting discovery has been made in terms of a at least unsolved death in the state of Oregon. Now, as those of you that have been following my channel know, I've been, over the last few months, I kind of started around the start of summer, I started looking into a lot of unsolved disappearances, murders, Jane Doe, John Doe cases, things like that. And in my research efforts, like stumbling onto all these, unsolved cases of people that have disappeared and whatnot, especially in the cases of women who disappeared when they were like in their late teens, early 20s, there was, in so many of these cases, there was references to a skull that many years after it was found was determined to have belonged to a woman, likely in her late teens or early 20s. And this skull, it was not a complete skull. I believe that the jawbone was missing, so from here up was discovered. And it's been kind of known as this mystery skull of a woman that was found on Mount Hood. It was found very close to government camp, which is kind of on the edge, going up onto Mount Hood. And in so many of these cases, because a lot of the cases I was looking into were young women that had disappeared in the late 70s, early 80s. And in a lot of these cases, they suggested, could this person possibly be this victim that this skull belongs to that was found in the vicinity of Mount Hood? So only recently did I discover that this Mount Hood skull was even a thing. And and it kept popping up and I was almost thinking maybe I just need to do a video about this Mount Hood skull because it's such an intriguing mystery. And it wasn't until 2008 that they fully determined for certain that it was a woman's skull. Well, I just found out that less than 2 weeks ago, it was reported October 22nd, 2020, that they have established the identity of the woman that this skull belonged to. Now, through extensive, continuing to analyze this and looking into forensics, they narrowed down who they felt. This is based on what I read. They narrowed down who they felt this skull may have belonged to among people who were known to have been missing sometime before 1986 when the skull was found. And there was one woman in particular that they narrowed down that maybe it's possibly this woman, and they were able to find her sisters and obtain DNA from them that they tested against the skull and found that it was a match. And they identified officially that this skull belonged to a woman who was last seen in 1976, so some 10 years before the skull was found. She was 19 at the time, and she was a woman named Wanda Ann Herr. And it's very interesting, they managed to, beyond a reasonable doubt through DNA, identify finally who this skull belonged to, but her sister said that they didn't grow up with Wanda. It seems like Wanda maybe she's believed to have been a chronic runaway. She may have been living in a certain type of housing situation where people who don't have a steady home, people who are, chronic runaways might stay and be kept. Not quite like a foster home, but some kind of particular housing for troubled youth. And she was last seen in 1976. So 10 years before her skull was found, and she was 19 at the time. And what's, it's the next frustrating thing. It's, at least we have an identification on something. And it's so interesting because, again, I didn't even know this existed until, 5-6 months ago. And, it's been sitting here a mystery for over 35 years, and finally it's resolved. But the whole issue has not been completely now the question is, what happened? How did this woman end up dead? How did her skull, and probably other remains that just were never recovered, how did they end up on Mount Hood? She was living in Gresham in 1976 when she vanished, so she was living, in the Portland area. But I think because of her circumstances, so little is known about Wanda and her life. They said that she didn't have a driver's license or even like state issue identification. She didn't have a bank account. Like, so little right now is known about her life. In fact, the only picture that they've been able to find of her is a picture of her when she was 12, some 7 years before she was last seen. Like, she's this total mystery. And so now, you know, the objective is trying to figure out what happened to her, who killed her, how did she come to this state. And it's going to be a very difficult investigation when you have a victim that so little is known about them. So, you know, that element of things is just getting started, but I just thought it was so wild that this random thing that I stumbled onto and didn't even know about more than 6 months ago, it's suddenly been resolved after, I said over 35 years, it was actually about 34 years ago when this skull was found. So I knew, especially since I've been looking into cases of missing persons, unsolved this, unsolved that, I the moment I saw this, I knew I had to address it and post about it and bring it to everybody's attention, because this is a major forensics DNA discovery here of this young woman who vanished, and not much is known about her, and nobody knows the circumstances around why she vanished. All we know is where at least her head ultimately ended up, in the vicinity of Mount Hood. So just yeah, just wild and very tragic that this, you know, this young woman who, you know, probably didn't have a very stable, at least the latter half of her life, didn't have a very stable living situation, and obviously probably wasn't very happy where she was at, which is why she was probably a reoccurring petulant runaway. And you know, who knows? She could have, like so many runaways, she could have gotten picked up by someone strange. She could have hitchhiked with someone, got picked up by the wrong person. Who knows? You know, you can speculate to the sky at this point because so little is known. But I just wanted to bring that to your guys' attention, that there's been, at least to a degree, a resolution in this case of this mystery skull that was found near a government camp back in 1986. So just want to let you guys know that. As always, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. Links in the description, along with a link to my Instagram. And yeah, till next time. See you guys later. It's been Steve, the Amateur Historian.